I have a very open agenda today. There are several things that I want to get through to talk about the Digital Information Technology BTech Tech Award. So that's kind of my agenda behind, but I do also, or more so, want to be led by you. If you have questions that you want to raise, issues, topics, throw them out right now, and you can either do that by typing them into the chat box window, and I'll deal with it from there. Or if you put your hand up, I'll actually hand you the mic. So this is your meeting more than mine. I've got plenty of stuff that I can talk about. I would much rather be talking about the things that concern you. So I'll just leave that for a second and either put your hands up or put some message into the text box. And in the absence of that, I'll just start away on showing you the things that I want to show you. So we're talking today about the Digital Information Technology BTech Tech Award. So this qualification is included in the DFE Key Stage 4 performance tables for 2020. It's a nice qual, 3 components, 2 internally assessed and 1 external assessed exam, the exam being 40%, and the 2 components then 30-30 each, making up the 60% balance. It's a nice qualification. I hope that you've had a look at it. When we developed the qualification, it was a requirement for the DFE to include it on the Key Stage 4, that it didn't overlap with computer science and that it didn't have an overlap with Key Stage 3. So it was quite an interesting brief, and it didn't get through the DFE scrutiny on its first try. In fact, it took 3 tries before we got it approved, and that didn't happen until May of so Verity, you can't hear, really sorry about that. So it didn't happen until May 2018, and this is why we're running behind a little bit in terms of was how late, and because of that our published resources are definitely lagging. Having said that, the textbook is ready for purchase. The teaching resources that are here in the Active Learn digital subscription, that's what ALDS stands for, I think, but the teaching resources in here are really, I'm hoping, are going to be excellent. They're talking about being quite comprehensive and being stuff that will add to the free resources, which are the schemes of work, and the stuff that's available here online is going to fill in with actual lesson plans and activities and online digital tests and stuff. And if it's half as good as it sounds, it's going to be a fantastic resource to teachers that are already busy and don't need to be writing lesson plans all the time. So I've been asked, will it be released earlier? Yeah, that's a good question, because of what I've got. If you go to my most recent newsletter, let me just grab that. So yeah, I tried to capture information in here about the resources available. So I'll go to the Tech Award sheet here. Resources. So I don't know if you subscribe to my newsletters, but please do subscribe. I try to keep you updated on when things are going to be ready. So there's the student book, builds on the teaching this free schemes of work. The teaching resources is meant to be available, and I think in here I talk about in spring of next year. So after a lot of pressure, we are looking at doing that partial release. So here's Digital Information Technology. Yeah. So the whole Active Learn teacher resource, which was previously planned for release in early March, We now plan to release it in 4 stages. So there'll be a free slice available anytime now. What's that? Yesterday, 21st of November. And that will have activity sheets, PowerPoints, and stuff for Learning AMA for Component 1. Component 1 resources along with complete front of class active books mid-December, so middle of next month. Component 2 resources end of January, and Component 3 and complete release mid-March. So that is good news. That'll be these details will be in my next newsletter, which will come out in December. So if you don't subscribe to that, please do. The way you get to it, if you go to our website and go to qualifications, our qualifications webpage, qualifications.pearson.com, and if you do subjects, computer science and ICT, this is my details here, and this is how you sign up for that newsletter. Okay, it will only be released earlier. So hopefully everyone's able to hear. I'm just going to have to carry on then. So the things that I wanted to talk to you about today, I wanted to signpost this web page, which is my subjects, computer science and ICT. There are a few things in here which are important for digital information technology. First of all, there's a shout out here to the FAQs. There's training events for the Tech Award, and there's some Tech Award resource news here. If you scroll down the page to popular topics, FAQs, this area here is where I curate the FAQs. Now, 6th of November, this DIT FAQ was updated, so I do keep it relatively fresh. As interesting and important questions come in, I try to keep these updated and fresh. And so, but this is across all of my subjects, and you'll see that there are quite a few nationals resources there as well as CIDR. So do have a look at this as a resource to keep abreast of the most up-to-date FAQs. The other thing that's in here are the Tech Award videos. So here are 6 videos that talk you through the background to the qualification. So that's a good resource to know about, both from the point of view of my contact details as well as how to get to the FAQs. What we're noticing with this qualification is that there's a lot of teachers, and maybe this will ring bells with you, that are coming to this qualification having maybe not done BTECs before, or having actively tried to avoid BTECs in the past. And that's something that we're trying to help address. We've created a page on our website. It's called Delivering BTEC Qualifications. You can find it from support topics, see all topics, Delivering BTEC Qualifications. Now this page has been put together very recently. Everything above the delivery cycle here is really a quality nominee and center level sort of issues. So becoming an approved center and getting the qualifications on the list of approved programs. So as a teacher coming in, though, I think this delivery cycle, the 12-step delivery cycle, is a really useful resource, because it's the first time that I've seen where we've tried to break down step by step the process that you go through when you're doing the assessments. And certainly BTech Assessment is different to computer science or GCSE ICT, any coursework that we've done in the past where you've got a moderation type of methodology. So it's very different, okay? It is true to say that there would be more ongoing requirement to do assessments in our model, the verification model. than with a large GCSE coursework package where you go all the way through a large project, and then at the end of the project you gather the data together, send it off for to moderation, and then sit and wait to see what the results are. This does work very differently. I've done some pretty pictures or actually ugly pictures to try and explain that. I'll just launch that up now. By the way, please, all the way, will there be more training events? Absolutely. I'll show you where you can find out about them in just a second. BTech QA. So I'm just rabbiting on my own agenda here. Please do interject if you want to, and you have things you want to cover that are different. I drew this silly little thing to try and explain. So with the BTech quality assurance model, there's a start and a finish, which are purely admin. Starting is about the center getting approved and having the qualification on the list of approvals, and your exams officer, together with your help, adding students, registering students up front. So that's the start. The end, of course, is where you've come to the point where you want to certify the students, and you claim the awards for the students. So you could think of this at the beginning of their year 10, and this is going to be in the summer of their year 11 if you're doing a standard 2-year delivery. Let's have a look at the teach and assess part of it, which is what us teachers need to get our heads around, and where the difficulties or differences come in. So if you look at the Digital Information Technology Tech Award, there are the 3 components. Component 3 is the exam. And the exam, of course, is available 2 times a year, and you can have 2 attempts in total at the exam, which means that it's a take and a resit. And that's a requirement of the DFE's regulations for inclusion on the technical award category for performance table inclusion. So in terms of delivery, though, rather straightforward. There's subject content, do a mock, do an exam, probably in the January of 2020, which is the first time it'll be on, and then a resit is a possibility then for the summer of that year. But it's component 1 and 2. So here you've got the 40% exam. Here you've got 30% component 1 and 2. These are our 2 internally assessed units. So both of them are built, have the same structure in that they have 3 learning aims. So let's just jump into component 1. So you've got learning aim A, B, and C. Now this process here that I'm going to talk you through quickly is how BTech delivery and assessment works. You teach the content from the unit spec for learning aim A. You teach the content. Then you do a practice assessment. Then you obtain or you create your own assignment brief. So we have authorized assignment briefs for all of the learning aims. But you take that authorized assignment brief and you add dates and the name of the assessor. So as soon as you've taken that authorized assignment brief and you've put dates on it, you're saying this vehicle is going to be used for assessing my students. I'm going to hand it out this date. I'm going to have it back in on that date. And that's why even if you're using an authorized assignment brief, you're still required to internally verify your assignment brief. And that's that step that you see on this next bullet point here. When you've done that, you run the assessment. So you've taught learning aim A, you've taught a chunk of the subject content for component 1. You've set yourself up with an assessment vehicle, and now you run the assessment. That's normally done in a short, sharp assessment. Hand it out on the Monday, have it back on the Thursday. If they hand you nothing back, you can fail them. This sounds quite draconian. The lead internal verifier, the person who's running the course in your center, has got a lot of leeway to give students chances and opportunities, but it's really, really worth trying to stress to students the importance that this is not coursework. It's not something that goes on and on and on and on. you do the teaching. When the assessment is handed 2 days later, 3 days later, 4 hours later, whatever makes sense for your center and your students, they better hand something in. If that they hand in could be improved, you can give them a resubmission date, and they can address the issues that you've raised. And the level of feedback is something that is covered. I'll talk to you about where it talks about that in a minute. So you've run the assessment, you do the assessment of the student's work, you internally verify, so it is a requirement of the process that in your center somebody is able to verify, take a sample of what you've done and sanity check it. It doesn't have to be another IT teacher, it could be somebody borrowed from an experienced BTech practitioner from business or something could easily do it. If you have more than one, if it's more than just yourself delivering IT, then it can be the other person. And that's sampled and done in your center to a level that helps you feel confident that you've got a consistent approach to the assessment. Anyway, so we've got down here, and then you hold that sample ready to send to your SV. The SV is a standards verifier. That's the first person external to the school or center where, and their job is to sample the assessments that your center have done. And if they see that assessment is done in a valid and accurate and reliable way, they release your assessments, and what you've said is it goes. I've gone through Learning Aim A. The same exact thing happens with Learning Aim B, and the same exact thing happens in Learning Aim C. You can combine Learning Aim B and C together in one assessment if you like. You can combine Learning Aim A, B, and C together and do one large assessment. Standard or normally our recommendation is to chunk it up into smaller bits because it just seems to work better, but it does mean that little bit more admin. When you get to the end of our Learning Aim C, you've got assessed work now for the whole of the component for all 3 learning aims. This is now ready to be sent to your SV, and then you'll get a report very quickly back which will either say thumbs up, all good, carry on, and your assessments that you've applied across the whole of your cohort stand, or there will be in the report actions that need to be taken either by yourself or the students in order to remedy the situation. And that's the process. And it's very different from GCSE coursework, and it's very different from moderation, because the moderator you can't talk to. With moderation, you're sitting there on results day to know whether you've had an adjustment done. With this system, you're having a dialogue with the SV, and it's a supportive relationship, and you know long before results day how component 1 and component 2, what your students are sitting on. Please do ask any questions, chip in at any time. I've got my eye on the chat box and I'm looking for any hands up, but so far none has happened. So this is just me ranting on. I hope it's useful, and I hope it's on topic and what you want to hear about. I would like to tell everybody about the Facebook group for the digital information technology. I set this up in May after we got approval. You can find it. It's in my signature at every place. If we go back to my subject page, subjects, computer science and ICT. Well, there you go. You'll see that there's a link to it here. Like I say, it's in all of my signatures. It's a really nice group. It's growing. Let me see how far are we up to today. 890 members. So we started from nothing in May, and we're gaining traction here. And it's a busy area. Lots of people on there. I draw your attention to the post that I put up this morning, which is looking for people to look at that delivering BTech page that I showed you earlier and use this Google form to give me feedback. I'm desperately trying to improve that page to make it as useful to teachers as possible, and to try and demystify some of the ways that the BTech delivery work. So I really appreciate your having a go at looking at that. If you're not on this BTech page, on this Facebook page, please do try and join. It is meant for teachers only, and I do ask that people requesting entry will tell me that they're a teacher and what centre they're at. But I think we suspect that there's one student on there at the moment, and we'll get that taken care of as soon as we know for sure. It's not completely watertight in terms of that security, but it's a really good resource. So if you want to work with people in your neighborhood, you post on here, is there anybody near me doing DIT and would like to meet up and see if we're on the same lines. This is exactly the power of this group, because I literally can't, if you would contact me and ask what schools in my neighborhood are doing the qualification, I can't tell you because of data protection. So this is a great way of working together. Once you get in the group, you find that there's a G drive that has been set up by one of our colleagues, and in there are some resources. Lots of it is a duplication of what's on our website, but there's also some different stuff. I've put on there a tracking tool, which I'll show you because it might be a useful tool to help you with your assessments. So this is quite interesting. When I looked at the assessment criteria and the rules for grading this qualification, I found it wasn't quite as straightforward as some of the other BTech. So I built a little tool to help me understand how it works, and maybe help teachers with capturing the assessment data. So we've come into it. This is our DIT product, and you can see that you've got the record. So it's built to manage a class of 30, and you've got the records for component 2 and records for component 1. So if you were to take a student number 1 and go to do assessment on component 1, you'd click this box here. So what you've got now are the assessment criteria laid out in this grid, and it's simulating, sort of highlighting the assessment criteria that you might think for this student makes sense. So clearly, if learning aim A, B, and C, you've got where did you say this can be found? Yeah, this tracker is in the BTech. It's in the G drive of the Facebook group. It's sitting in there, and you can also email me and ask for a copy. What's interesting about it is that there's normally with the BTech, the way that BTech assessment works is that it will always, the outcome will always be at the lowest grade. In other words, you have to get everything above a certain grade level to be able to get that grade level. So this is a different approach where some awarding bodies for the vocational qualifications have a best fit, and this might well be level 2 pass, because there's 2 at level 2 pass and only 1 at merit. But what's strange here is that that there are special rules here where if you've got a level 2 distinction in component C, it will drag up this from to level 2 merit, and that's captured there for that student. And then you can go back to where that will be held for that student. So component 1, you're now on 21 points. If that student were to add some work in, let's let them do a bit better than that. If that student was at level 2 merit for component 2 as well, you get the summation of where they are on component 1, where they are on component 2. You can apply targets here, and it will calculate for you what is required from component 3 to help them to meet their targets. Well, anyway, that's the plan. It's just a little tool. I mean, what I find useful is sitting here double clicking this, and it might even be something that you do with your students, because if they get distinction on learning aim A and B, and then they do something stupid like this in learning aim C, you see that it ends up in their overall component 1 result not being very nice at all. It pulls them down to 9 points instead of the 29 they could get for distinction. I don't know, useful stuff, maybe not. It's something that helps me to understand the way it works. Would you be able to send this on to us, please? It's also, you don't have Facebook, Lauren. Yeah, I understand that. The Facebook group is so useful. I'd recommend joining it, even if it's under a teaching name, just for the DIT. I don't use Facebook except for managing the DIT groups, and the other ones I do for work. So I certainly don't have any great love of the tool. But in terms of helping us professional teachers work together, it's powerful and useful. It's also in the materials here for this meeting, I believe. If you have a look in the materials, I think DIT component tracker is also in there, so you should be able to get it in a range of different ways. I've lost my chat window. Let me just grab that again. Okay, so where are we? We're at 12:30. I'm conscious that you're busy people and it's lunchtime. I really do want to be as responsive to your needs as possible. I still haven't had any questions come in, so do put your hand up or type in the text box if you have any questions. So that's a useful little tool for looking at the assessment. Now, another thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of, let me go to my home page. The search bar on our website is really useful. I use it all the time. BTech Tools. This is something that I want to make sure that you bookmark. It comes up, BTech Assessment and Verification Tools. When you get here, if you scroll down, you'll find that there are all of the blank form templates that you need to run through the process. They're not in it. They're alphabetical order, I'm guessing, on this list. They're not ordered in any particularly sensible or helpful way. The titles are useful. If you look above, however, there's some very interesting guide documents. The Guide to Internal Assessment. I'm just going to have a quick dip into that now. It's reviewed annually. So this is the 2018-2019 version. It's only 22 pages long. I'm sorry, I know that sounds disgusting because you're too busy to read through 22 pages of anything, but it does have in it, it's very big writing, that's any consolation, but it does have in it some absolutely essential reading, because it's in here where you will see where you can see the power, the flexibility that the lead internal verifier has to provide students with opportunities to be successful. If a learner has not met these conditions, the lead internal verifier cannot authorize a resubmission. So there's also the way to show students that it's serious. You can put this in front of students and parents, and if a student has literally just not taken it seriously enough, just not handed anything in, you don't have to keep going round and round the loop of coursework creep where you're constantly getting little bits of extra work in to mark and it never ends, they can be failed. And it's harsh, but this is part of supporting teachers, that these parts of the rules and processes came in. Then there's the processes here are explained for how you go about doing resubmissions and the reasons why you're allowed to, and then retakes. This gives you the ability for a student that's completely failed a learning aim for them to go around and start again. Not very nice, not very easy, but it can be done. The importance of meeting deadlines, and then very importantly, the feedback that is allowed to be given during the different stages. So if you remembered, you do the teaching and learning part of the delivery, and then there's the formal assessment, and then there's following assessment. So there's really good information in here, and it goes on to exemplify the feedback that's allowed to be given to learners. So it's a document that I would recommend for those of you who are both familiar with BTech Assessment and definitely those that are coming to it new. The idea of internal verification sometimes sticks in the throat, but the beauty of the BTech quality assurance process is that you own the process. The downside of that is that you have to go through certain checks and balances, and the verification process is fully explained here in this 14-page document. And it does talk about which documents are covered, what's best practice. It talks about standardization, retaining documents, internal verification of assignment briefs. And this is what I was saying earlier, even if it's an authorized assignment brief, you may choose to not change one comma or authorized assignment brief, but you do importantly add the dates, and then so you have to take ownership of it. So it's all explained in here. We do a really good job of trying to provide the reasons and the processes and make it available. The only trouble is it's a bit heavy reading wise, so that's why I think this delivery page will hopefully be useful. This is a really key page. Do please bookmark it. Also, where can you find the marking grids for components? For component 1, A, B, and C. Okay, so thank you. Can I explain when further training will be available? Yeah. So two things, the marking grids. So let me show you first where to find training. This qualifications page, again, my very well used tip of typing training into the search bar, and you'll get the training from Pearson will come up in the first place. So this is training from Pearson. If you want training to be done in your center, you go through this link here and complete a web form. If you want to ask questions about training that Pearson are putting on, we ask you to go through this contact us web form. Quite often people will email me at teachingict@pearson.com, and if it's a question that I need to send on to the training team, I have to come in and complete the web form, and sometimes I get a little bit narky with me, so really good if you can try that yourself. Let's find what we have for BTech Tech Award. BTech Tech Awards and Digital Information Technology. So here are the currently live events. Join waiting list. Please do join the waiting lists. If enough people click on join waiting list, it will trigger them to put on an additional event. So they're the only two that are up now, and they're both full. Okay, so that presumably that's why you're asking the question. So definitely click on the join waiting list, and it might mean that there will be some more events put on, but definitely in the spring there's plans to have more events. They just haven't been posted up here yet. So what you could do is grab the event code and go to contact us and UK training. So I apologize about this web form. I think it's horrible, but this is what they'll want to see. If you're a teacher and you're in the UK and you're interested in general information, so you'll be asked for your name, centre number, the qualification that you're interested in. Yeah, event code. They love their event codes. I can't decipher them for anything. I don't know what, if any intelligence has gone into the design of the event codes, but by all means ask there for what's next coming up. When's the next one of these coming up? That's how I would suggest they would be doing. And what would they be covering? So if they're getting ready to teach, let's see. So getting ready to teach, yeah, so they go through a brief overview of all three of the components. They talk about the subject content and ideas for delivery, and then they go through some examples of actual assignment briefs and assessments. That's what they cover. Let me see. Okay, so question, was hoping for support and training on marking. Okay, what we want you to do for standardization is as follows. We want you to use the sample marked learner work. So I'm going to go to the web page and show you where that is. I don't think they're going to be doing standardization training sessions at this stage. Course materials. So here, this is what we want you to use for standardization. You've got internal assessments 19. So here you've got the authorized assignment briefs. And now you've got sample marked learner work. Oh, wow. Some more has arrived. So we've got component 1, learning aim A, which is merit. Component 1, learning aim B, which is pass. And now we've got some component 2, sample marked learner work. That's excellent. This is new up today, so I hadn't seen this yet. So that's great news. Component 2, component 1. So what we should have now is all 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So what we've got now is for component 1, we've got level 2 sample marked learner work that is merit, pass, and distinction. Component 1, learning aim A. And then, oh yeah, these are the original ones. Okay, so here's the level 2, component 1, level 2 stuff, merit, pass, distinction. Yeah. And then up here now is the component 1. These will be level 1, merit, and pass. That's it. So we've got 5 pieces of sample marked learner work for each component, 10 in total. This is what we're going to use for standardization. So what you do is you go through those, you show them to your team, the work that's in there, and you have a go at doing your own assessment, and then you compare it to what will be in there in the commentary. And as soon as you've done that, you're able to go ahead and actually do live assessments. And the way that you'll work, you'll maybe start with component 1, learning aim A first. What you need to wait for then is, as soon as possible that your standards verifier is allocated, you can contact your standards verifier and then start having the discussion with them about the assessments that you've made. And you don't have to worry too much about whether you've done the assessment wrong, because you'll be able to have the dialogue with the SV before, it's not like you have an adjustment, as happens with moderation, and every kid loses half of the marks you gave them. If at the time when the SV looks at your sample, they think you've completely misunderstood something, then you're going to have a discussion. They're going to send you a detailed report saying what needs to change, and you'll be able to there you'll be able to get really good support for figuring out how to fine-tune your assessments and your evaluations to get it right. So that's all of the sample mark learner work that is there now, ready to be used for doing standardization. So there's level 1 and level 2 sample mark learner work there for both components. So that's good news. I'm glad that's up. I didn't know that it went up today. Any other questions? Can we share the pupils of sample work? So these are padlocked at the moment because we want them not to be given out to students. The reason we don't want them to see it is that there's a tendency to take that and copy it. And that's absolutely not what it's supposed to be about. Remember that the assignment brief that your students might be working on could be a modified, authorized assignment brief. So it would be even worse were they to copy sample work to try and do it. And you need to be careful about this. It's a balancing act. And yes, you want to exemplify what makes a good answer. What I would recommend you do is test assignment briefs, so practice assessment before your formal assessment with an assignment brief that you've put together, and then do the assessment and then give them very good, clear feedback, because then the feedback is not restricted in any way. If it's a practice, it's part of the teaching and learning, and you can make sure that they know very well what's expected of them as they go into their formal assessment. So yeah, I wouldn't be sharing the sample marked learner work with students, at least not at this stage. It might be as things roll on and you develop very different assignment briefs, then these would not need to be worried about that they'd be used for copying. Where can the marking grids be found for each component and learning aim? So that's in the spec, but where they come from originally is a spec. So for each component, we'll have a look at the spec here now. So for each component, sorry about zooming down the pages. Component 1 starts here on page 15 of 82, and you go through the teaching content, so learning aim A all the way up to A4, then B, then C, then suggestions for delivery, and now you come to the learning, the assessment criteria. So this is the mark grid, okay? So for learning aim A, here's the mark grid. For learning aim B is a mark grid, and learning aim C. And then here is where the overall component grade is calculated depending on which of these assessment criteria you've been able to award the students. And that's exactly why I built my little tool, because trying to hold it in my head was difficult, and I didn't want to get these rules wrong. So depending on how these are awarded, you get down there. So that's component 1, and then you'll have the same thing for component 2. If I scroll down all the way through the component 2 subject content, here's the component 2 assessment criteria. So similarly, 3 learning aims, and then the final overall component grade. So does that, how much time should the assignment take for component 1 learning aim A? So what you have to remember is that it's up to you. If you think your students need 1 hour, they're incredibly bright, able students, and you believe that in 1 single hour lesson they're going to be able to nail it, give them 1 hour. If you think they're going to need 2 hours and you've got a double lesson on a Wednesday, hand it out on a Wednesday and have it handed in the end of the Wednesday lesson, and they'll have had 2 hours. In general, short and sharp. We don't recommend that you hand them a learning aim A assignment brief for formal assessment on a Monday and collect it in 2 Mondays later. So they've had 3 weeks to leave it lying around and not do it. So, and this does need a little bit of training, and students need to be made to understand the importance of the formal assessment part of the process, and that they need to deliver it back. But it is up to you. I'm not being glib. I mean, I think my personal feeling is that for learning aim A, I would be looking at maybe 3 hours, but the shorter the better, really. If you have very able students and you want to give them 2 hours, that's why you do an internal verification of your assignment brief with the dates on it to say that this is appropriate for my students. I haven't taught BTech before and wonder if there was a BTech document explaining the difference between the explain, analyze, and assess. So yeah, there isn't. But what we've done here is, I think, better than look at command word type of analysis. And what you have here is a really serious attempt to try to describe in prose what a level 2 distinction looks like. Do have a look at this. This is in this is the component 2 version. There's the same for component 1, and hopefully it will give you the framework to try and build sensible assessment decisions around. And yeah, I thank you for the question and for saying that you haven't taught BTech before. I know that there's going to be a lot of people coming to this qual who haven't taught BTech before, and it is very different to the moderation process. But there are massive advantages. So please do bear with it, and please do ask loads of questions. Email me, and we'll try and make the process transparent and understandable, and as little extra effort as it can possibly be. The great thing is, though, you'll know long ahead of time that component 1 and 2 are nailed and in the bag and ready, so that on results day, it's just the exam that you're waiting and not knowing about. So, okay, we've got 6 minutes left of this 1 hour slot, and I'm very conscious that it's your lunchtime and you're busy people. Please don't feel badly if you need to just duck out, but I'm going to stop talking now. I've been through all of the things that I wanted to raise. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for considering us. We will do everything we can to make this a successful program for you. Please do use us. Email me, and when your SV is allocated, do get in contact as soon as possible. The allocations should be happening December, and latest January, but hopefully most will be out there in December. So here are all my details. I don't Twitter very much. I'm not a big fan. Don't use it for messaging, but occasionally I will post things on the Twitter handles there. But for sure, the emails will come straight through to me, and you'll get very quick responses. Are there any other questions?